How does someone go about forgiving and feeling genuine love for somebody who has hurt them multiple times?
Wow. Okay, that's a tough one. We want to see the person as a soul that, made maybe wrong choices, bad choices, but forgive that soul. Something else that helps is to imagine that person that you want to forgive as a child.
I am here today with Bianca Ramos, and she is an out of body explorer. She's had a simulated near death experience and a miraculous healing. And we're going to learn about her story today. Thank you so much for joining me, Bianca.
Nice to meet you.
Yes,
Thank you for
likewise.
having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. So let's start with your first major spiritual experience, which you shared with me was an out of body experience. Could you share what happened leading up to that and then the experience itself?
Yes, absolutely. So my first out of body experience was spontaneous, and I had never even heard about out of body experiences before. So I was kind of shocked when it happened at the time. And I was 20 years old. I was still living in Germany, and I was on a motorcycle trip with my boyfriend back then. And I held on in the back to him. And the weather was so horrendous, so cold, and raining so hard that I felt like I was freezing. I could barely maintain being on the motorcycle. And all of a sudden, I was warm, I was comfortable, and I was looking down and I see myself down on the motorcycle holding on. And I was just I was in awe. I had never studied out of body experiences before. I was just thinking to myself, I better be holding on down there while I'm up here, all comfortable. And so I was not afraid at any time because it just felt really, really comfortable and I wasn't cold anymore. And it was kind of a timeless state because we were traveling for hours. So I was in a timeless state, kind of suspended until we hit the exit on where we needed to travel. And I came back into my body. And so for me, that was a very big turning point in my life because I decided I needed to study out of body experiences. I needed to study what had happened to me, knowing that it's possible. I got a book by William Buhlman, Out of Body, and I studied that and I started to practice out of body experiences ever since that first one.
Wow, incredible. So you're just riding on this bike and all of a sudden you're out of your body. Did you know about out of body experiences at the time?
Not at all.
So were
So
you confused about what had happened to
I
you?
was very confused. I didn't think I was dead. I didn't feel like
Mm.
that because I saw myself holding on the motorcycle. I looked very much alive down there. So I felt really comfortable and I just had never heard about it before and didn't know it was possible.
Wow, that's amazing. So you began studying out of body experiences and then began practicing them intentionally. Could you share your journey with that?
So when I started practicing intentionally, it took me several months before I could create another out of body experience. It didn't come easily to me. And I think I was just pressing on because I knew for fact that it was possible. So I kept pressing on. And I would also be diligent by practicing in the middle of the night, finding that that was kind of more likely to be successful. So waking up at 2 a.m. and starting my practice then, practicing different methods. And when I finally had success again, I was so excited that within seconds I snapped back into my body. So it was too much excitement. So you kind of learn by doing. So eventually I realized I have to be a little bit less excited when it happens so that I can move forward and not just snap right back in.
Yeah. So you mentioned that doing it during the nighttime or while laying down is probably better than doing it when you're on the back of a bike.
For sure.
Were you still in control of your body during that time?
I was not. I was just thinking to myself, I'm holding on down there. I had no sense of my body down on the bike. Not
Wow.
at all. I
And
just
somehow
saw
it
it.
stayed
hmm
there.
hmm
Interesting. So is there a specific technique that you've used to learn how to get out of your body?
I would say I practiced a lot of different techniques over the years, and there are maybe a couple of them that I like the most. One of them would be to move from a lucid dream into an out of body experience. What I like about that technique is you're kind of jumping over the entire vibratory state, which is a challenge in itself, at least to me. So I like that about it, but the challenge is you first have to have a lucid dream to be able to do this technique. So you have to find yourself in a dream, you have to realize that you're dreaming. And so then the technique that I use is that I intentionally say, I want to exit the stream and maybe move through a wall or move through a window. And I want to have an out of body experience where, let's say, behind the wall, I meet one of my guides so I can ask questions, find out information, and then find myself a wall and just phase through the wall and exit the dream. So that would be my favorite method.
Wow. Okay, so if you're uncomfortable with any of my questions, just let me know and we can edit it out because
Okay.
I don't know how detailed you want to get, but have you had an out of body experience where you've connected with one of your guides and you've been able to ask questions? And if so,
Absolutely.
would you be willing to share what some of those questions were?
Absolutely. So I had many of those, not just from this technique, because let me just backtrack for a moment. The negative part about the technique is that sometimes you're wondering if this was a real out of body experience because you exited out of a dream. So a part of you might be wondering, am I just in a different dream state? So I also, what I like about doing just a meditation until you're in a vibratory state, then you're actually going from waking state into straight into the out of body experience, which feels different, has a different quality to it. But with either one of those, the result is really the same when it comes to talking to guides when I get to that point. So not every experience led me to talking to a guide, but it was one of my major work that I did out of body. So what would happen usually is that I do find a guide, sometimes somebody I had talked to before, sometimes somebody completely different. And most of the time, my questions became irrelevant in that state. So they're just all of a sudden, yeah, I might remember what I wanted to ask, but then I'm thinking, that's just not really important at all in the great scheme of things. And then instead, I would have more of a telepathic connection to the guide more than anything else, kind of a sharing of unconditional love, a very nice, warm feeling where you just feel supported, where you feel your guides are always with you, they're always there for you, they're always guiding you without the need for most of those questions. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I would get direct answers, but a lot of times it was just more of a feeling of support and love.
Oh, that's amazing. It makes sense that when you're in that state, the questions you would have from this perspective seem irrelevant.
Yes, they do.
So when you came back to your body, did you go back to a state of mind of wishing that you had asked those questions?
Sometimes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's so funny.
hmm
So you mentioned your second technique for getting out of body is meditating until you go through a vibratory state.
Yes.
And I'm curious about that. What type of meditation do you have to do and how long does it take?
So the challenge on this technique, and there's several different ones, but the one I would say I use the most is to trick the mind that the mind thinks you fell asleep. So, and the way to trick the mind is to completely be still physically, to not move, even if you feel a sense of discomfort somewhere or an itch somewhere or anything, to ignore it and just stay still. And then at some point, if you're successful, which means you're not falling asleep, if you're successful, then your mind starts to bring the body into complete paralysis, physical paralysis, so that you actually cannot move, which is a little bit scary if you don't know about that, but it really is something that happens every night in your dream state. You get into that physical paralysis when you're dreaming, so you're not acting out your dreams and punching around. So when you get into that paralysis state and your mind is still awake, that's kind of a precursor to getting into the vibratory state where you're just starting to sense those vibrations because your energy body and your physical body are kind of getting out of alignment. And you can even hear some really loud whooshing sounds. And so what you want to do is you just kind of want to go with it, not get too excited, but also you don't want to get scared. And then you can imagine yourself floating up or sitting up or pulling on a rope to get yourself out or rolling off to the side. And then you find yourself out of the body.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I remember when I was a really young girl that something similar to that would happen to me, where if I was laying still for a really long time, all of a sudden it's like I would disconnect from my body and sort of start to feel like I was floating, but I never had any idea of an out of body experience or anything like that. So I would just move my arm or something and kind of come back.
Hmm. But it was the beginning of one because you sensed the floating. So your
Mhm.
energy body was starting to move away from your physical body. So that's pretty cool.
That's fascinating. So is there any specific experience that really stands out to you? Like, what's been your most interesting out of body experience?
That would be the simulated near death experience.
Oh,
So that moves
yes. Let's
right
hear
into
about
that
that. Yeah.
topic. So when I was having about a success about once a month with the out of body, practicing every night and once a month success. So that's a lot of work, but it was worth it. I've been wanting to experience what it's like to be in the light. So that was an intention of mine. And it took quite a few months to be able to get there because maybe the first out of body experience, I was too excited and I was just lying or again, meeting up with a guide because that seems to be a big theme of mine. It took some time before I had an out of body experience where I felt, okay, I'm ready. I want to experience being in the light. And because your thoughts in that state, they really produce results right away. It really brought me into what I would say into the light. So there was just light everywhere and it felt like I had a 360-degree vision. It's kind of hard to explain. So literally, I wouldn't just see throughout my eyes, but I could just see everything around me. And the feeling with that was just this really ultimate sense of peace and love and oneness that I had never before experienced. It was just really, really incredible and life-changing. I mean, it was a short experience, but it was so profound that coming out of that, I was also never afraid anymore of the dying process, which I don't like to call dying. I like to call it transitioning. So I would never be afraid of that process because I have a knowing what's on the other side.
Wow. Amazing. So did you see the light, or was it more of a deeper experience of just of feeling what that was like?
It was both. I did see it. It was everywhere around me. It really felt like, what other people describe when they describe a near-death experience. And I had asked basically to experience that. I had asked my guides, I had asked my subconscious, and I had gotten myself ready for it for several months. And in fact, after that experience, that's when my out-of-body travel slowed down somewhat because it was just so profound. I felt like I reached what I really came to do. It's time to get some sleep at night.
So I know this is beyond description, but how would you describe the feeling of being in the light?
To be honest, the best word I could come up with. And it's just when I got out of this and I had to find words for it, it would be orgasmic.
Mhm.
Because I would say that that would be the closest to where you would feel anything like that.
Yeah. I love the fact that you said that, because I have thought that so many times, but I have not been bold enough to say that publicly.
It is just the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and like, not just like on a physical level, at least for my experience, but like on such a deeper level, like a whole, like a being level.
Yes. But I also do believe that because I had that experience and it was the best way to describe it, that when you have the other type of experience and you have a deep love connection, there is no wonder that this is something really, really special, because I think it's the closest that we get to connect to all there is.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, in your out of body experiences, aside from that one, where you obviously had the most profound experience that a person could have you mostly stayed in like the astral realm or the dream realm, or have you gone out into the universe and visited other planets or anything like that?
I have been going out into space to move about. Did I have alien encounters? I did not. So just more like being in outer space, traveling up and out, and also seeing the Earth from outer space, which is amazing in itself. That I did.
Mhm. Wonderful. I thought of another question about the light, actually. Sorry to
Yes,
backtrack.
yes.
In your experience, what is it? Is it like the source of creation? Or I've heard some people say it's our higher self. What was your experience of it?
I would say it is a reminder that really we are all one, that we are all connected and we're an extension of what you could call source. All connected, just that we feel a separation, but we're not really separated.
Right. Have you seen yourself and what your spirit body looks like when you're out of body?
I have not, except for the motorcycle part, right?
Right.
That was the only time, because also when I would read the out of body books, they kind of recommend to not think about your body, move away from your body, because as soon as you turn around, then you're kind of more likely to snap back in. And
Yeah.
if you just spent the whole month to practice and you're finally out of the body, you don't want to risk snapping back in. You want to just move forward and out.
Right.
And that being said, some people are scared about out of body because they're wondering, what if I don't get back into my body? I think that's the least one people have to be concerned about, because that's the easiest part, to snap back in.
Yeah. So you're saying it's harder to stay out.
Yes.
How far do you think a person can go when they're out of body while being physically alive?
That is a really good question. Now, I have been taking courses from the Monroe Institute where they do a lot of exploration. And, I even think that you can do explorations out into space and far out without even being fully out of body, just like with a split consciousness where you're in deep meditation. A part of you is still aware that you are in meditation, and another part is having the experience.
Fascinating.
So I don't think there's really limits.
Have you experienced a split consciousness?
Yes, many times.
Mm.
I think that's easier than the full out of body experience.
Interesting. I read stories of the great yogi masters who could split their consciousness to such a degree that they could actually manifest another body, like a light body in another
Yes, I have
place.
read that. That is really amazing.
So what you're describing sounds like maybe the beginnings of something like that.
Yes, but even if there is not another light body somewhere else, what makes it easier is it takes the pressure off of you feeling that you need to exit your body and leave your body behind. Because
Right.
same thing with communicating with guides. So if I do a deep meditation where I'm still aware that I'm, let's say, lying down in my room, but this was just a part of me being aware of that, and the other part of me is communicating with the guide, it is literally just as profound.
Well, I would love to hear about your healing experience that you shared with me.
Yes. So in 2018, I suddenly started to have itchy skin. It sounds a little funny, it sounds weird, but it started just with a little bit of an itch on the elbow, and then it got to a point where it got really annoying. Like I couldn't focus because I had unexplained itchiness of the skin. And so I'm a trained hypnotherapist, and I just treated myself like I would a client. And I asked myself right away, what does this remind you of? Like I'm used to. And immediately came to me, it reminds me of my anger I feel with my dad. Because the first thing was, it reminded me of being angry because I was angry at my skin for doing this. And then when I resonated that anger, it resonated with that anger I felt with my dad for basically abandoning me and my two children when we were supposed to visit him in Germany. And he suddenly, for no reason, said, I don't want to see you anymore at all. And we were supposed to stay there. So we didn't even have a place to stay.
Oh, wow.
I would say my dad probably has some kind of a personality disorder, because I can't really explain it otherwise, why he would get so these really crazy things. He had disappeared in my life several times before, but in this instance, my children were involved as well. They had to sleep on the floor of the apartment of my grandmother. I had severe anger. I must admit, I was very angry. So when the skin issue appeared, when I realized I had this anger that I was carrying, the first thing I thought, well, maybe I need to reach out to my dad, because I hadn't tried, just kind of to reach out, and maybe that will help my skin. So I sent him something saying that we're family and it would be nice if we could put this behind us. And I honestly didn't do it because I felt like I was forgiving him. I just did it because I was hoping it would heal me, and nothing shifted. Okay. So then I had a hypnotherapy session with a colleague of mine, a friend, and I was able to shift that anger into sadness, just feeling sad for that my dad cannot express himself better. So that was better than feeling the anger, but my skin wasn't getting better. And at the same time, it was getting so bad that I couldn't sleep at night. So if I could barely sleep, then, your mind gets clouded. You cannot make rational decisions. I asked my boyfriend if he could take me to any skin doctor. And I don't know if you know, but dermatologists are very booked, very booked.
Oh, I can imagine.
So he had to call so many numbers. I was overwhelmed because I had no sleep. I couldn't even function. So he had to call so many before we finally could see a dermatologist. And they did run tests, and she gave me this pill that said, oh, it's a Godzilla of pills for anti-itch, and it wasn't going to work. And I don't even like taking medicine, but at that point I was kind of desperate. So it turned out when I took a Xanax that she prescribed, that worked. So it was telling me again, if that works, it's just shutting out the mind, and now I'm not itching anymore. It's just gotta be just in my mind, because I couldn't even see any rash. So I decided to do a hypnosis session on myself. I would have liked to have another session with a colleague, but this was a colleague, she was very booked out. But she gave me some advice, because sometimes you don't see the forest, you don't see the trees in the forest when you're standing there. And I asked her for advice. She said, why don't you talk to skin directly in the hypnotic state and ask skin what it needs to heal? And she also said the skin is your largest organ, and it's a scream for you to do something. It's not just a little shout out, it's a scream. So I realized that's what I had to do. And to get into a very deep state, I decided to do breath work. So the breath work modality is a continuous breath in and out through the mouth until you get into hypnotic state or altered trance state. And the way our hypnosis school teaches it is in 10-minute cycles. So I put myself a little timer that would chime every 10 minutes. So I would just kind of check in with myself and kind of knew where I was in the process, because I had to pretend I'm the therapist and the client. So I started breathing, and 10 minutes in, I heard my little timer, and I did my little check-in, and I was like, yeah, I think I just got to keep breathing. And as I kept breathing, the itching went so tremendously bad. It was a 10 out of 10 because now my skin is really screaming at me. So that meant I was also getting all like rallied up. I have to know what you want from me. And I asked it out loud. It felt maybe a little silly in my own living room. I'm like, Skin, you got to tell me, what do you want me to do? And I'm getting this download, this answer from Skin, basically, you're not listening anyways. And I was like, what the? I'm like, you got my attention. I am listening. And Skin goes, no, you're not listening anyways. I said, okay, whatever it is that you want me to do, I'm going to do it. I don't care what it is. So Skin decides to tell me, thank goodness. And Skin says, you have to tell your dad that you love him and you have to mean it. Wow. I was like, wow, okay, that's a tough one. So, and then Skin basically said, told you. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Is there anything else? Is there? And then I wasn't sure if there was anything else. So I said, I'm going to breathe another 10 minutes. And if there's anything else, you better tell me now. So I just breathed another 10 minutes. And that was it. That was all I got. And when I got out of the state, I was already really fired up. It was probably the best time to step into feeling love for my dad, stepping into that, not just pretending, not just, for my own sake, but to really feel it, to really step into that forgiveness for what had happened and to write him an email from there, including the I love you part. And so I sent that off and he did not respond. I didn't really expect a response either. He did not respond, but I did my part. And within 48 hours, pretty much exactly, because it usually takes a couple of days for the body to catch up, all of my itching went away completely.
Wow, that is incredible.
So that was really something because it had been going on for many, many weeks. And within 48 hours, it all went away.
Wow. So there's probably a lot of people who are listening who have health complaints similar to yours of various issues that they've had that, I mean, I know I've had health issues throughout my life that I just haven't been able to get an answer for. How would you recommend that somebody go about finding out if there could be a spiritual root to their physical health issue?
Well, first of all, I have come to believe that there always is a spiritual root to a health issue at this point. And then second, I do not recommend to do what I did. I did that in desperation because I didn't have a colleague that was available and I couldn't wait another 3 months for an appointment. I couldn't even wait a week, not 3 months. I would highly recommend to seek out hypnotherapy for something like that. Now, if it's a diagnosed issue, you will need a referral from a doctor to just that says something that it's okay to work with hypnosis on this, but I would highly recommend it. And I love breath work myself because I feel it gets you very, very deep into what you're looking for versus regular hypnotic inductions. They can get you just as deep potentially, but the breath work adds to it in that it is designed to help bring out emotions that were just kind of pent up, that were stuck. And it brings out those emotions which really help the healing process.
Wow, that's fascinating. I had another breathwork hypnotherapist on the show, and she said the same thing. Don't do this without oversight. That's someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes, and she's actually a good friend of mine.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so here's a question for you. How does someone go about forgiving and feeling genuine love for somebody who has hurt them multiple times?
It is definitely a process. And there are components. There is a component of just your logic. Your logical mind can maybe think about this, or if I forgive this person, I'm really healing myself. You have to kind of first also get to that type of understanding how important it is to go into forgiveness, because if you are carrying hatred in your body, you're hurting your own body, you're not hurting the other person. And then, when you have that understanding, then you need to get that other component, that true emotional component, to open your heart to find forgiveness. And what we do in hypnosis to help facilitate that is there's several techniques, like separating the person from their behavior, for example, because we don't need to forgive behavior that was very poor, but we can separate the two, because sometimes people just do the best they can with their given resources, and they have not been good enough. So again, we're not forgiving the action. We want to see the person as a soul that, made maybe wrong choices, bad choices, but forgive that soul. Something else that helps is to imagine that person that you want to forgive as a child, what their upbringing might have been like, and maybe they have experienced certain things that led for them to do certain actions. And when you see them in the child state, you might be able to easier forgive them as a child. So
Thank you
those are all
so
helps,
much.
helpful tips.
Yes, that's so helpful. Those last 2 techniques that you mentioned, I had never heard of before, and I really appreciate you breaking that down.
Yes, I believe forgiveness work is one of the two very fundamental practices when it comes to going into hypnosis and really helping to heal yourself. And then the second really important component would be to reprocess beliefs that you have been carrying around since childhood. So if things happen to you during childhood where part of you thinks you're unlovable or you're not worth it or maybe incapable, and those false beliefs stay within you somewhere, even though another part might know, oh, that's not true. I know I'm lovable. But if that's still somewhere within you and has not been re-educated, that is another important part that we do in hypnotherapy.
Would you like to share about what you do and where people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I have my own practice in Palm Harbor, but of course, I also have a lot of Zoom clients that I see. And usually we do 3 sessions. The first one being maybe a hypnotic programming session where I do recordings for people to help them achieve goals that they have, give positive suggestions. And in a second session, I would most likely, depending on what clients' goals are, get in touch with a part of them that is not aligned with their current goals. We call it parts therapy, because we all know sometimes there's a part of us that wants this and another part that says something else. And we want to kind of align the personality. So I really like doing parts session, because afterwards the person feels so complete. They feel they came to a resolution of an issue that they came in with. And then in a third session, to potentially heal childhood, not necessarily trauma, it could just be childhood memories, because everybody's collecting beliefs about themselves in childhood. It doesn't have to be super traumatic. So that would be a good third session, or maybe also doing breath work to release those negative emotions that we've been collecting for a long time.
I have a couple final questions for you.
Yes.
In all of your spiritual experiences, I am wondering if you were ever given any information on why we are here living these lives.
Yes, that's a big question. So my personal take on this, and from the explorations that I had, is that we are living multiple lives, going from one lifetime to the next. Obviously, I that could still be totally wrong, but that is the impressions that I have collected, to really keep growing and keep exploring, and also to agree to a degree to really enjoy and have fun in this earth life system and environment. We're not really supposed to be here to suffer. We're also
Right.
supposed to be here to enjoy everything this earth life system has to offer.
Mm. And as a hypnotherapist, I'm curious, to your perspective on this question. Do
That's
you
okay.
think that you said we live multiple lives. Do you think that we carry some of that programming from one life to the next?
Yes, I do. I do think so. What I caution clients, though, is some clients that are uh, very curious about their past life experiences and they want to do past life sessions. I remind them, let's first make sure we heal this lifetime before we look further down the road, because it's so much easier to say, oh, I am just overweight because of this in this lifetime, but not have the courage to actually look at what happened in this lifetime and what happened in this childhood, which I think is where we should be starting. And then absolutely, if the person wants to, doing past life regressions after that.
Why is it that you think that we have to heal these things while we're in the body? Because it seems like it would be easier to just heal on the other side where everything is perfect.
I'm not sure if I understand the question because, I mean, while you're here in this body, you do have some things to heal. You don't want to wait
Mhm.
until you transition to the other side, right? Or
Right.
what do you mean with your question?
So if we're carrying some of our programming from one life to the next,
Yes.
is there a purpose to why we have to experience these things and work these things out in the body?
Oh, from the last lifetime. Why
Mhm.
not? Why not clear this life between lives, right? The
Right.
question. Yes. Okay. I understand the question now. So that's a great question. I would think that we do clear some things, life between life. I think we do. Maybe it is some really heavy duty stuff that is carrying over and some karmic things that just haven't been resolved yet. Because if you're also thinking about karmic relationships, if they haven't been resolved, you're going to encounter them again in the next lifetime. So then obviously that will not happen between lives. That will then carry on into the next.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences and for answering my questions. I will have your links in the description so people can check those out if they're interested.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.